The implications are that the United States leading from behind generally doesn't work very well. And the prime example in most people's minds is Libya, where we led from behind, got involved, overthrew Gaddafi, and now what do we have? ISIS with a foothold in Libya. Syria, on the other hand, is an area that Russia, it's their only puppet state really in the Middle East. They care most about their military bases there. If Russia actually wants to knock out and hit ISIS, that's fine. It's going to be their treasure, their cost for doing so. I think there can be ways that the United States and Russia can cooperate as far as any of these radical Islamic terrorist groups, and that Russia cares as much as we do about thwarting them. So there can be ways that we can work together. Yeah. On the other hand, there's other areas that obviously there's disagreement. But in counterterrorism, we ought to try to work with every country we can to try to thwart that for our own safety and that of our friends and allies.
Senator, here's Mike Murphy.
Hey, Senator. So I thought
Mike.
How are you?
Good.
So the interview last night seemed like a proxy for kind of what's wrong with the Obama administration, in my opinion, in that not only Steve Kroft pointed out a lot of weaknesses in our international policies, but President Obama didn't really seem to get the urgency or get the problem. What can we do to kind of bridge the gap between now and Election Day to avoid things like Putin getting stronger or potentially Iran getting closer to a nuclear bomb? How do we keep our safety over the course of the next 12 months into the election?
Great question. The key thing insofar as Iran was concerned is this, I call it arms sales agreement with Iran and that theocracy. And to the extent there's anything that Congress could do, because there are sanctions, and the sanctions should not be lifted. And there's a good legal question as to whether or not this so-called treaty or agreement with Iran is binding on the United States. It may be binding on other countries that signed on to it. But if we can stop, first of all, any of those funds getting to Iran, that would be good. In fact, when I was in the Senate, we were trying to get after those assets for the victims who had court judgments against the Iranian government, seized those assets, and wanted to use some of those assets to compensate those who had gotten judgments. And so I would hope Congress will at least do that and stop any funding of Iran. Moreover, the country looks at as us going, the people of our country look at America going on the wrong track. You see poll after poll that shows that. Now, I think that the candidates on the Republican side ought to be saying, here's what we ought to do. Now, I'd like to see the House and Senate actually work together. It'd be great if the House will come up with a leader who's willing to take that on. I think the Senate, to actually get things done, are going to have to change that filibuster rule so that they actually can have majority rule and put issues and ideas and solutions and reforms on the desk of the president. If he wants to veto them, let people see the differences.
We've been waiting for that. That's what that's been the criticism, right? That we haven't seen enough of that. Real quick, Anastasia, go ahead.
Just real quick, I wanted to come back to something you said earlier. You said there is room for cooperation between Russia and the United States in Syria. Is there really, though? Because Russia, yes, sure, they're bombing ISIS, but they're also backing Assad. And, of course, that's the exact opposite of what the U.S. wants to happen. Is there really room for cooperation?
There's a narrow room, but you have to understand the interests of Russia. Russia has that naval base on the Mediterranean. That's what they care about. I don't think Russia actually has any great love for Assad, but that's a regime that they've had a relationship with. There are Russian troops and Russian naval forces already in Syria, and so you have to have that reality. Russia, to some extent, saved the face of America when the president had his incoherent request to fire a shot across the bow, and that wasn't going to get support of Congress, which is bad for our country, and in that they would have refused it. And Putin actually came in and saved the face of America's policies, or the president, by saying, all right, we're going to get rid of these chemical weapons. You got to understand what Russia's interests are there. And our main concern, I think, should be the Kurds. The Kurds are willing to stand up and fight for their own sovereignty, for their own destiny. And I think that's an area and a people that we ought to be fighting for, and also support Iraq to the extent that they'll do it. But The ones who are our best friends and allies in the area are the Kurds, as well as protecting the interests of Turkey.
Senator, good to have you on the program today. Thanks so much.
Good being with all y'all.
We'll see you soon. Senator George Allen joining us there.